Here, thanks, gentlemen, and recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this administration seems to have set a record for the number of agency heads who have wrongly deleted work-related emails, the number of federal employees who have pled the Fifth Amendment to avoid incriminating themselves, and the number of officials who have failed to respond to lawfully served subpoenas. Even in this deplorable company, one agency stands out. The Internal Revenue Service targeted organizations solely on the basis of their conservative views. We expect this kind of behavior from dictatorships and totalitarian governments, not from the United States of America government. It represents a direct attack on freedom of religion, it represents a direct attack on freedom of speech, and thus an attack on our Constitution and our democracy. This corruption of power, continued unrestrained for several years, can only lead to one conclusion. Such conduct is an abuse of office that was condoned by the administration and warrants stiff penalties. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Ohio, Jim Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Koskinen, I'm going to read from the Articles of Impeachment. Page 2, it says, on March 4th, 2014, the Internal Revenue Service magnetically erased 422 backup tapes. Is that statement true?
Yes.
Were you commissioner at the time that these tapes were erased?
Yes.
Was there a subpoena in place for the very information that was erased?
Yes.
More than one subpoena, right? There were two subpoenas.
Well, the subpoenas asked for specific information. The assumption is that some of that information was on those tapes.
Not the assumption. It was on those tapes because it was from the critical time period when Ms. Lerner's hard drive had crashed. Mr. Koskinen, who's Kate Duvall?
Pardon?
Who's Kate Duvall?
Kate Duvall was serving as, counselor to the commissioner.
When we got her bio, it said, counselor to the commissioner, said she advised on high-profile investigations, and she was a member of your senior management team. Is that accurate?
Yes.
In her deposition in front of the Oversight Committee, Ms. Duvall said she learned on February 2nd, 2014, about Lois Lerner's computer crash and missing emails. So on February 2nd, the counselor to the commissioner in senior management working on high-profile investigations learns evidence is missing. And 1 month later, March 4th, the backup tapes that contain this evidence are destroyed. What a coincidence, Mr. Koskinen. 1 month after your top counselor learns Ms. Lerner's hard drive has crashed and there are missing emails, the backup tapes, the secondary source, the primary source is gone, and a month later, the backup tapes are destroyed. Now, here's what's also interesting. Those backup tapes were supposed to have been destroyed months and months beforehand, weren't they, Mr. Koskinen?
Yes, and a large number of them had been destroyed in 2012 and 13.
In fact, you testified to this. You said this. Ms. Lerner, this is testimony in front of the Oversight Committee. You said Ms. Lerner's hard drive had crashed in June 2011. As a result, certain emails could not be retrieved. Recovery tapes containing data for that period no longer existed. False statement, they did, but they were supposed to have been erased. This data was retained on tapes for only 6 months. So they were supposed to have been erased actually 2 years prior to the date that they were, but they somehow survived. They somehow survived, and then exactly 1 month, 30 days after your top counselor, Kate Duvall, in senior management learns that the primary source, the emails, are missing, these backup tapes that have survived for 2 years suddenly get destroyed. And we're supposed to believe that's just a coincidence? That just happened by chance?
The Inspector General spent a year looking into exactly that subject and came up with the conclusion after interviewing over 50 witnesses that that was totally a mistake by 2 employees on the midnight shift in Martinsburg.
The old midnight shift guys in Martinsburg excuse.
Well,
okay.
That's
okay.
the IG's report after a year.
Okay. Well, let me read one other statement to you again from the Articles of Impeachment. This is on page 3, Article 2. On June 20th, 2014, Commissioner Koskinen testified, quote, since the start of this investigation, every email has been preserved, nothing has been lost, nothing has been destroyed. Is that statement true, Mr. Koskinen?
At the time, that was what I had been informed, what I believed. A year later, or 9 months.
It could not have been true at the time because that said the date is June 20th, 2014.
That's correct.
And you just told me on March 4th, the first question I asked you, on March 4th, 3 months before that, March 4th, 2014, that the IRS had destroyed 422 backup tapes.
That's correct.
So how is this statement true that you made under oath to a congressional committee?
The statement was not correct in light of that evidence, which I did
So
not
the
know.
statement wasn't true?
A statement I thought was true. It was not true on the basis of the evidence that we discovered later.
Mr. Chairman, this is the problem. You think about any of the folks we represent, any of the constituents I represent in the 4th District of Ohio has this same fact pattern where they lose documents and then a month later, they're being audited by the IRS, they lose documents, a month later they destroy the backup disk, and it's fine, they can get away with that. This is what so many Americans are frustrated about, this double standard. Mr. Koskinen can lose documents, the IRS can lose documents, then destroy the backup source, the backup tapes, and nothing happens. Any American that happens to them, they're in big trouble, and everybody knows it. We're not asking to, all we're asking is this guy no longer hold this office. That's all we're asking, and in light of this fact pattern, I think that's the least we can do. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman from Texas has expired.